All right, I will, in absence of our chairman, Councilman Black, I will be your chair today. So I will call this meeting to order. Ms. Robinson, can you please call the roll?
Chairperson Scott Black, Vice Chair Olivia Diaz,
Present?
Commissioner Cheryl Davis, Commissioner Sharon Davis, Commissioner Misha Hooks, Commissioner Tix Segerbloom, Commissioner Dan Shaw, Commissioner Lawrence Weekly. A quorum is present and we are in compliance with the Nevada open meeting law.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, we're going to go ahead and take public comment now. Public comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters on the agenda for discussion and possible action. If you wish to be heard, come to the speaker's podium, clearly state your name and address, and please spell your last name for the record. The amount of time any single speaker is allowed will be limited to 3 minutes. If any member of the board wishes to extend the length of the presentation, this will be done by the chair or the board by majority vote. And make sure that what you're speaking to does fall in line with what we have on the agenda. Thank you.
Beatrice Turner, and no, we don't have to state our address. I don't know when that changed, because it's not the city council meeting. This is the housing authority meeting. We had never had to state our address, but it's Beatrice Turner, and I'm here because y'all have an agenda item where y'all gonna be getting rid of one of their vehicles, and the vehicle that they are getting rid of, the residents have first choice if they would like to purchase the vehicle. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. Any further public comment? Seeing none, we're going to go ahead and close public comment and move on to the approval of minutes of the regular meeting last held by this board on November 21st, 2019. Do I have a motion?
Move for approval.
Okay, I have a first by Commissioner Segerbloom and a second by Ms. Davis. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, we're moving on to agenda item number 4, approval of agenda with the inclusion of any emergency items and deletion of any items for discussion and possible action. So, well, hold on. So this includes consent agenda items number 5 and 6. The Board of Commissioners for the Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority may remove an item from the agenda or delay discussion and action relating to an item at any time. Consent agenda. All matters in the subcategory are considered by the Board of Commissioners to be routine and may be acted upon in one motion. Most agenda items are phrased for a positive action. However, the board may take other actions such as hold, table, amend, etc. Consent agenda items are routine and can be taken in one motion unless a commissioner requests that an item be taken separately. The chair will call for public comment on these items before a vote. For all items left on the consent agenda, the action taken will be staff's recommendation as indicated on the item. Items taken separately from the consent agenda by commission members at the meeting will be heard following the commissioner's executive director's recognition section. So I will like to pose the question to my fellow commissioners. Does anyone wish to add or remove any items that we will be entertaining? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move to what next?
To accept the consent agenda.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to accept.
Move to accept the consent agenda.
Okay, so I have a move to accept the consent agenda from Commissioner Segerbloom, a second from Commissioner Davis. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that moves. That consent agenda item is approved. That is the end of the consent agenda. Moving on to the next part is, let's see, does anyone from us up here want to recognize and have any recognitions for either the commissioners or the executive director? Any comments?
No recognitions from the executive director.
Okay. I do want to recognize, I know that during the holidays, our staff was diligent in handing out, for example, Thanksgiving turkeys, and there were an excess and surplus of turkeys after giving them and sharing them with our employees. And I know that there was a decision made to then share what was left over with residents. And so I'd like, to commend that thoughtfulness of making sure that what we have to share, we go ahead and do so with the residents of the Housing Authority. So I want to just go on the record stating that I appreciated that.
And while we're doing that, I want to thank the staff and the director for the Christmas parties, or whatever you want to call them, but the bicycles you gave out and everything else. It was very impressive, and so thank you for organizing that, and hopefully the residents got some of those.
Commissioner Weekly has...
Thank you so much. Yes, ma'am. I would also too like to thank the Housing Authority staff for their support in ensuring that the residents had an opportunity to participate in our holiday event that we had. Thank you for getting them over there. I think it meant a lot to I know it meant a lot to the residents and to a lot of those children. And then also too, I want to thank Mr. Stafford, who worked diligently with getting residents involved in Shop with a Kappa, as well as the Thanksgiving holiday giveaway as well. That was a blessing to a lot of the residents. And then I think there's a portion on here, Madam Chair, where we acknowledge, and I'm not sure if I'm jumping ahead of the agenda here, but although this gentleman here was not a resident of the Housing Authority, I think over the years his service and his give back to the community is worthy to be recognized. And today our community is grieving for the loss of Louis Connor. Louis Connor, a former business owner in West Las Vegas, just did a lot to give back to a lot of residents. Anytime you've gone to his restaurant to ask for any donations to help residents or to get involved in the community, he was always one of those pillars and one of those ones immediately ready to step up to the plate and give back. And so, if you don't mind. And he's a former board, okay, I didn't know that. Thank you, Mr. Herron. Former board member of the Housing Authority. So I'd like to make sure we put him on the record and show our acknowledgement for the Connor family. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention, Commissioner Weekly. And in recognition of his loss, we'll just have a moment of silence. All right. May he rest in peace. And Mr. Williams, if you can also acknowledge our departed as well in that vein, since we're already on that subject.
Madam Chairperson, residents that have departed from the Housing Authority include for the month of November and December, Gary Burkett at Balazar Apartments, Michelle Jones at Harry Levy Gardens, Darnita Houghton at James Down Towers, and Mahina Hojati at Sartini Plaza. Madam Chairperson.
Okay, they'll be missed. Let's see, and now for discussion and possible action, we have items under this section that are open for discussion and possible action, and I'll turn it back to Mr. Williams to give us more information and roll us right into the first one.
Madam Chairperson, I'd like to bring item 8 on the agenda, approval of 2020 utility allowance, utility schedule for Housing Choice Voucher Program to be effective March 1st, 2020. The Department of Housing and Urban Development requires housing authorities to comply with the HUD regulations 24 CFR 982.517, which states the PHAs must maintain a utility allowance schedule for all tenant-paid utilities except telephone. Action that is being requested is to authorize the executive director to approve the utility allowance schedule for Boulder City, Clark County, City of Henderson, Las Vegas, North Las Vegas, Mesquite, and Mesquite, Nevada, with an effective date of March 1st, 2020. I would also like to have our Director of Housing Programs, Ms. Smyers, give a presentation to the board prior to public comment on this agenda item and board discussion on what the utility allowance is.
Good afternoon.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, my name is Ms. Myers. I'm the Director of the Housing Programs. I'm going to give you a brief summary about what the utility allowances are and how it affects our program. The family utility allowance is the amount designated by the Housing Authority as a family reasonable amount of allowance, covers the monthly utility bills. Since HUD limits the amount of rent landlords can charge our low-income tenants, their rental cost must include the estimated utility allowances. It keep assisted housing affordable for lower income family households. Federal housing law directs that residents' share of rent in federally assisted housing should equal up to 30% of the household's adjusted monthly income. In interpreting the federal law, HUD has defined the total tenant rent or the total tenant payment for rent to include both shelter and cost of reasonable amount of utilities. The amount of the PHA determines is necessary to cover the resident's reasonable utility cost in the utility allowance. Such allowances are estimates of the expenses associated with different types of utilities, such as natural gas, electricity, propane, fuel oil, wood, coal, and water, and sewage services, as well as garbage collection. The functions or end uses covered by the allowances may include space heaters, water heating, cooling, refrigerating, lighting, or appliances. Allowances are not provided for telephone services. HUD requires each PHA to require its utility allowance schedule reviewed at least annually. If utility rates have increased cumulatively by 10% or more, the most of the recent allowance, the Housing Authority must adjust their allowances. SNRHA evaluates our utility allowance annually by consulting specializing in a federally assisted programs in energy efficient audits, inspections, testing, and ratings for home builders in multifamily industry. And that particular third party is SNRHA. Do you want me to go to CMAP?
Now, if you have questions, or open it up for public
Are
comment.
there
on the
any
agenda item.
questions from the commissioners before we open it up for public comment? I have Commissioner Weekly.
Thank you. Under the trash collection, does the Housing Authority have a franchise agreement with Republic Services?
Not for the Housing Choice Voucher Program. That's a part of the sewage utilities
It's
that
all
the
combined?
landlord, which
Okay.
the landlord says whether they're going to pay it or the tenant is going to pay it. So
Yes.
that would be up to the home property owner.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, okay. So is that determined in their agreement before the tenant signs a lease, or, yes?
Yes, it
Okay,
is.
yes, ma'am, thank you. And then my other question would be, when we look at the subsidy increase, possible increase that we're looking at, how often does that happen?
The 10% of utility allowance increases, we have to wait to get a analysis from NELROD, and they'll compare what we had last year to what we had this year, and then that will determine if the utility allowance needs to be increased.
Is that an annual thing, or is that?
Yes, it's done
an
annually.
annual, okay. Okay, I think you answered my third question. Thank you so much.
Commissioner Sager-Blum.
I had a question, it may not be pertinent to this, but since utilities came up, have we negotiated anything with Nevada Power to agree to stay with them, and they in turn give us $1 million or something? I know the county and the city and other places have been doing that.
No, we haven't. Thanks for giving me that idea. We'll look into it. No, we haven't.
Yeah, we were able to, in the county, get a couple $1 million, I think, and then we were using that to, like, purchase efficient lighting and things like that, so saving money going forward, too. And if you have a problem, Lawrence, Commissioner, well, any of us can reach out to Nevada Power and make that happen, or at least help.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, just one more question,
Yes,
please.
Commissioner Weekly.
And Mr. Williams, question for you is, and this, the lady here answered, she answered the question for me, but I'd be interested in knowing what type of agreement that you all have with Republic Services and the number of years that you have in your franchise agreement.
Yeah, so what I can do is have Mr. Shaw come up during the executive director's
I can
report.
get it later. Yeah.
Okay, we can send that out to you and the rest of the commissioners.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks, Madam Chair.
I do have a
Commissioner
question.
Hooks.
As I was looking at the utility allowance, I was kind of wondering what's the initiative moving forward dealing with solar energy? Is that going to be something that we're going to consider? Because power is really expensive. and it just seems like there's no cap. So, I mean, I'm seeing in the community where I live, a lot of people getting solar panels. Is that something that the Housing Authority is considering, maybe working out a contract with Nevada Energy and maybe considering that as an option?
So that would be something that the Housing Authority would look at some of our new developments going forward. That's something that we haven't done in the past, but it's something that we can definitely explore. We currently already do with our new developments, make sure that they're energy efficient and make sure that they're applicable towards Energy Star, and so we move forward with that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I just wanted to know how often there are increases in utility allowances. Do we see it every year, basically? Or are we seeing it I want to know the trend and keeping up with the cost.
I would have to go look at the statistics. I wouldn't be able to have the information. If I could go and look at our NAILROD report, and I could see how often each time we increased it and be able to get that back to you.
I think that just would lend insight into this discussion that we're having about maybe examining our agreements with certain providers and just seeing how that's panning out. So
Okay.
appreciate that.
Mhm.
All right. Any other questions? I guess seeing none. Oh, Commissioner
No, Madam
Wakely.
Chair, I was going to say if there are no more questions or comments, I'll make a motion to follow staff's recommendation for approval, please.
We'll
Just-
hold that, but we'll have
Oh, I'm sorry, public comment. I apologize. My bad. All right, I got you, ma'am. I'm sorry.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and open it to public comment. on
Okay,
this.
all right, okay. Down, my bad.
Shut up. Beatrice Turner. As for, I know y'all saw on the news where the gas company went up overnight on the gas bills. So, and I mean, they did a big jump, because mine went from 60 to 100. But what I got to say to the Housing Authority, with help of Southern Nevada, who do the screening to see how much the utility bills cost, and they do the solar screens, the air conditions, the refrigerators that need to be replaced, that's all. I'm gonna say to my last damn time, y'all need to look and using some of that money that help of Southern Nevada have to be, because I had them to do Sherman Gardens over, and they did the air conditioning units and the solar screens, and they did Marble Manor. So, and that's been a while, so it's time y'all get back with help of Southern Nevada and use some of that money they have, so some people can get some of them power bills and utility bills down. And the money is sitting there, so y'all need to use it, because North Las Vegas can't use it.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. Any further public comment?
I just have a question, please. My name is Annette Walker, and I'm from Sartini Plaza. The question that I have and concern, I actually had gotten my printout, and I spoke with the state of Nevada, because on here it says utility allowance, $295. Now, we understand that Jamestown, they do not pay a utility bill, whereas with Sartini, we do pay utility bills. We're totally electric, but our annex is gas and electric. And we have actually we have other residents, and I've actually been denied benefits, period, with the utility assistance. But when I got ready to have my recertification, it was mandatory that I bring my utility bill that I pay in order to be recertified. So my question is, does the Housing Authority or the state of Nevada receive this utility money? And even the people who are approved, they're only getting like $30. So I'm trying to find out, because like I said, I have it here, and I even have a hearing with them, and no one ever answered that for me. And after having this particular hearing with the state of Nevada, they actually changed how they do your printout, because this is no longer even on your printout for you to see where these funds are going or coming. So I want to know if we are entitled to this utility money, and if the housing authority is getting it, and if we're still having to pay our utility bill, because my utility bill was $179 when we had a flood, and they used our electric 10 days, 24 hours a day. All of my neighbors, our utilities went up. My utility bill was $179, but I only got a $30 rebate from the housing authority.
Do you have any information to shed light on these
I
issues?
got it on my phone.
So
Mr. Williams?
I'm not totally clear in understanding Ms. Walker's concerns, but what I will say is that there's a calculation with our public housing properties on how that utility allowance is applied to subsidize the actual rent that's actually being paid by our tenants, but we don't pay the full utility cost for a tenant.
That's not the question. The question is, do the tenant, on a monthly basis, receive an amount that is for their utilities? Because again, by the time, you pay for just your basic utilities, your rent, and, telephone or your transportation, you have nothing left. And if these supposed to be an allowance, then that's how you're supposed to be supplemented, is to my understanding. And I'm not.
So let me see if I'm understanding.
Okay.
The utility allowance is built into the monthly payment for where they stay, correct?
Yes, I've
Or where they
stated-
reside or where they
yes,
live?
I've stated that correctly.
Okay, so the utility allowance is part of, it's calculated into your monthly payment, what you're paying to live, whether it be Sartini or any other housing authority property. So that's what I'm understanding, that they account for how much you're maybe going to pay in bills, but I
Correct.
understand that they're saying that sometimes their bills can be triggered, or some event might cause them to have an
Right, but that wouldn't
increase.
change the subsidy to reduce their.
That calculation.
I
Right,
guess my
exactly.
concern is, whenever you're dealing with government funds, they can only be used for whatever it is strictly allocated for. And when you're saying utilities, then it should be only allocated for utilities. When it comes to housing, it can only be allocated for housing. So the housing is taking our utilities, and I'm not sure if we really are getting the funds that we're supposed to be getting for the utilities, because again, James Down does not pay a utility bill, and I don't know what they did in order for them to do that. However, I'm saying we are paying utilities and being denied assistance when we have to go and reapply. We're being denied. I'm telling you, I am being denied, and I have several of my neighbors who have complained too, and then the people who are receiving it, they only receive it for a portion. It's not like for the whole entire year, and then it's only a portion of these funds. But like I say, and I'm willing to give anyone, and I went through 6 months of my printout, and it shows for utility assistance allowance is $295. So I'm just saying, when you figure out what your utilities normally run on a monthly basis, it pretty much just like you do with the fair market rent. That's the way they calculate your utility allowance and what you should be paying within your area for a one-bedroom. So again, I really want to know this. And again, if we're due to these funds, we need to have these funds. You're talking to people on very fixed, low income. So thank you. That's my question, and I'm really interested in the answer as soon as possible, because I got another utility bill getting ready to come back out. Thank you.
Thank you. What do you recommend, Mr.
Well,
Williams?
Madam Chairperson, what we can do is at some point, either next month or in February, give a presentation to the board on how we actually calculate that and how the rents are calculated for our public housing residents based on the subsidy, their income, and the utility allowance.
I think that would be great, because I don't know the intricacies of the calculations, what you're bound by HUD to do.
Right.
I know that we're doing we're structuring everything under HUD guidelines and what HUD is asking us to do as an entity. So I think it'd be helpful both for the public and for us to be further educated, since
Right.
I don't know.
All right, I agree.
Phyllis Carpenter. I know that when I apply for SNAP, they say that I get $78 a month towards utilities. I get a check every month for $13. So I don't know why that is.
So it's back to the board to move and approve.
Now I can take a motion, Commissioner Weekly.
Much, Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to follow staff's recommendation for approval, please.
Okay, so I have a motion by Commissioner Weekly and a second by Commissioner Davis. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We'll move on to number 9.
Madam Chairperson, item 9 is approval of SNRHA Resolution SNRHA 109. This resolution is to satisfy an annual requirement of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development that each housing authority conduct a self-assessment of its Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program using the 14 indicators prescribed by HUD. This resolution and required certification are attached for review and approval. Based on our assessment, our Section 8 Management Assessment Program score is 150 out of 150 possible points, which includes a 5-point bonus for deconcentration efforts. This score equates to a high performer. Action that is being requested by the staff is to authorize the chair and of the board and executive director to sign resolution SNRHA 109 and submit the CMAT certification for 2019 to HUD. In addition to that, I'm having Ms. Smyers, our Director of Housing Programs, give a briefing and orientation on what the CMAP is.
Good afternoon again.
Thank you.
The Section 8 management, that's really loud. There we go. The Section 8 management assessment program measures the performance of the public housing agencies that administers the Housing Choice Voucher Program in 14 key indicators. CMAP helps HUD target monitoring and assisting the PHA programs that need the most improvement. The 14 indicators of the PHA performance, as Mr. Williams mentioned, are the selection of the waiting list, proper selection of the applicants from the Housing Choice Voucher waiting list. Number 2, rent reasonableness, sound determination of reasonable rent for each leased unit. Number 3, payment standards, establishment of standards within the required range of HUD's FMRs, which are the fair market rents. Number 4, determination of adjusted income, accurate verification of family income. Number 5, annual reexaminations, timely annual reexamination of family income. Number 6, correct tenant rent, correct calculation of the tenant share of the rent and the HAP, which is the housing assisted payment. Utility allowance, which we just talked about. Maintenance of the current schedule of allowances for utility cost, pre-contract HQS, ensure units comply with the housing quality standards before families enter into leases and PHAs enter into a housing assistant payment contract. Number 9, annual HQS inspections, timely annual housing quality standard inspections. Number 10, HQS quality control, performing a quality control inspection to ensure housing quality standards. HQS enforcement, ensure landlords and tenants properly correct housing quality deficiencies. Number 12, lease up, ensure all available housing vouchers are used. Number 13 is expanding housing opportunities and deconcentration. This is expanding housing choice outside of areas of poverty and minority concentration. And number 14 is the FSS enrollment. Enroll families in family self-sufficiency program as required and help FSS families achieve increases in employment income. You have any questions?
Any questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Weekly?
Thank you. So with this self-assessment, I'm just wondering about the tool that you all use in terms of measuring how you come up with, giving yourself an A. And I understand this is, based on my briefing, this is the last year that this particular process will be used?
Yes, how it wants to move more into a tool where it's a non-self-assessment. That's correct, as I debriefed you yesterday.
Right. So in this self-assessment here, I'm just kind of going over a few things. I guess one of the questions that I would have is, do we do any type of resident survey to ask? Because there are a lot of, specifically questions number 9 and 10. We look at number 9 and 10. I would think that I would want to know, what do the residents think? When we talk about timely inspections, that could be questionable. And this is no dig or slap in the face at any staff members, because I'm sure everybody do the job to the best of their ability. But there have been a number of calls that, we've had, and we've had a lot of discussions about a number of those issues. And so when I look at number 9 and number 10 specifically, I'm wondering, how did our numbers fare, and how did we rate ourselves, as it relates to coming up with this high performance grade that we've given ourselves? And I'm interested in knowing that. I mean, it's like being in school and you take a test and the teacher lets you grade your own paper.
Right. Yeah, we talked about this for some time, and I'm not a big fan of the self-assessment. So the first question is, no, we don't do a resident survey. That's something that has been challenged to the board from me since I started. It's something that we haven't done on a consistent basis, and it needs to be done. So that's fair. A challenge to your executive director. On 9 and 10, obviously there are processes in how HUD says that we pull files, look at our timeliness in our Yardi system on how things move through our process, and it's captured, and we rate that. One of the things that will change, and I don't think I mentioned it yesterday in our debriefing, is that that department has a quality compliance specialist that has been ingrained in that department since I got here, and probably in time. We will be pulling that person out of that department and having that person directly report to the executive director, so that the executive director can actually direct the compliance, monitoring, oversight, and quality control to get a better understanding of what's going on in that department, as I debriefed you yesterday, which I have my concerns about.
Okay, and Madam Chair, just one more follow-up question, please. Thank you. Ms. Meyer, I guess one of the questions that I would also ask you and Mr. Williams, when we look at just the high performance area here and we talk about distribution, one of the things that I've had a concern with is you all have a huge waiting list.
Not anymore.
Oh, okay. So I don't know. Based on what I know, I've seen a high number. Just a huge waiting list. And maybe you all have done something different, and I'd be interested in seeing what that looks like in 2020. But help me understand. I guess the other part of my question is, what is it that what will we do differently, but what have you done differently now to kind of chop that number down?
So we have pulled, out of the 10 years, they had not had a waiting list open. There were 1,300 left on the waiting list. The admissions department did a purge, and out of that, it maybe have been 600 left that responded to that 1,300.
Yes, ma'am.
And by now, we have seen and asked people to come in out of that 1,300. So, out of the 600 that were left. So right now, we're actually pulling the RAD mobility vouchers to pull out of those 255. So we've been continuously pulling from the waiting list since I've been here for the past 6 months.
Okay. And then I guess I'm sorry, Ms. Williams.
I do have a correction or a clarification. So our waiting list is extensively large on the public housing side, which is about 60,000. The waiting list on the Section 8 side has been closed, as I debriefed the board starting back last summer, for the past 10, 11 years. And one of the challenges for our new director is to get that waiting list back active, so that we can pull folks from our community here in Vegas instead of porting in folks from other parts of the country, so that we can utilize our vouchers for our own people here.
I'd appreciate that, because I noticed at a couple of the schools here, there are folks who are fluctuating back and forth between Vegas and LA. And people here are currently being booted down on the list because somehow we're honoring those vouchers that are coming here from California. And I'm wondering, what is it that we're doing to alleviate that? Because it's a huge problem, and it really causes a major problem in our school system as well, because now you're having the school district to spend this amount of time tracking this kid, trying to find records on this kid, and it's taking away time from kids that they could be, and families that they could be servicing that live right here in the neighborhood. And when you look up 30 days later, they're back in California.
I totally agree. It's something that, both of us can relate to based on our upbringings, that, these programs should be for folks who actually put the time, effort, resources, go to school here and work here. Not so much for folks who move here. The resources that this agency and this county, the county government gives should be for the residents here. It's something I'm very passionate about.
Yes, sir. And then finally, Madam Chair, my last question is, we also talked about, and I believe that this was a concern that came from your finance department, was we were addressing the FTEs, one for every X amount of residents that we have. And it seems to me that that's where the backload is, because we are overloaded as it relates to caseloads. And I guess I'm wondering, moving forward, how are we going to address that to continue to get those numbers down?
Yeah, so what I had to brief you on, Mr. Commissioner Weekly, is that I recently was going through an executive certification program with Rutgers and the Public Housing Directors Association, and one of those things we learned in our class was that there was a ratio, a HUD guideline ratio of baseline vouchers based on FTE for a housing choice voucher program. And that baseline voucher for agencies such as our size, with 11,900, let's just say 12,000 vouchers, should, for every 500 vouchers, we should have one FTE. And that calculation came up to somewhere between, that we're overstaffed in the HCV department between 15 to about 21 FTEs. And it became advised to me that it was a productivity issue that we were getting from staff, and there's some things that we have to look at: modernization, administrative burden, and then how we deal with that. Because one of the things that HUD allows so that housing authorities can generate income and revenue, sustain the central office cost center for non-federal funds and distribute those throughout the agency as need be, is to charge the HCV program an administrative fee up to 20%. Over the past 10 years, unfortunately, that advice and counsel wasn't heeded to, that was being given either to the board or previous executive director, or to the board from the director of finance, Mr. Herron, and we were capped around, I guess, 10 or 12%. We increased that this past budget to 17%, but it's my goal that we should be able to get up to 20%, be able to use those non-federal funds for other activities, such as maybe helping out a playground and not be constrained by our capital funds. But so if you think about it, if we were able to do that since the inception of the merger of the agencies, just think about how much more money, non-federal funds, we would have been able to have to use.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Meyer.
Commissioner Sagerblum.
Can I just follow up? So I'm not clear, are we working to figure out a way that we can prioritize local people as opposed to coming from out of state?
Yes, that's a priority for me.
And just, can you just explain what we have to do? Can we help you on that, or?
No, so that's something internally. One of the things, we're going through a process of our annual plan right now, which we do every year and submit to HUD. And so in that annual plan, we'll be we'll be instituting how we're going to open up our waiting list for our Section 8 program, how individuals can be selected. We can also do preferences based on selection, based on homelessness, veterans, other type of special needs activities if we want to. The board will receive that. They'll be able to review that. We'll be able to present that, and they'll have a discussion on how we go about reopening that waiting list.
And just follow, so that will be the next 6 months or so?
Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the commissioners for Ms. Myers or our executive director? Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and take a motion. Oh, no, public comment. Correct. Public comment on this item.
Beatrice Turner. Commissioner Weekly, open up your radio show one Saturday morning and see how many calls you get in about folks that got their vouchers snatched away because they wasn't getting phone calls back. They ain't got no phone call. Open up that radio station and see how many calls you get. And you know, I try to come here in good faith and do what's right. But see, I can't stand to see folks stand here and ain't telling the whole truth. Open up that radio station on a Saturday morning and see how many calls you get.
Phyllis Carpenter. Okay, so last month, they had a real estate assessment evaluation. I've had them do that in the past. I've had it come through, and maintenance or the office, whoever, open a work order without my knowledge and come into my home without my knowledge to do these repairs. I pulled up to my house, and maintenance has been in my house doing these repairs. Okay, so after they came through to do this evaluation, I called maintenance to see if there was...
Ms. Carpenter, does this relate to item number 9?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Well, because
Which
the whole
item?
standard, well, it's the standard of their grade that they
Oh,
gave themselves.
okay.
Okay, so.
Got it.
They've. Okay, I'm sorry. Sorry.
Hello, Chair. My name is Debbie Vega. I reside at 10907 Door Knock Castle, Las Vegas, Nevada, 89141. I've worked for Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority almost 10 and a half years. In our new department with the director, Ms. Myers, as well as Ms. Davis, I want to thank the board, first of all, for giving us great leadership in the direction that we're going and the breaking of teams. It is the first time in the almost 11 years that I've been able to commute back and forth, do my job, and not have to worry about being bombarded with such work or what you come back to. So I would like you to really appreciate that all we do and be able to look at the real facts on both sides of the table instead of it always being one side. Thank you.
I give the Housing Authority Director and
Your name, sir?
my name is Jerry M. Neal. I give him an F. And I wish HUD would come ask me what's going on, because I come here and I look for help and I watch y'all doing y'all taking off and getting your little money and everything, take care of your business and everything. But at the same time, I see residents who live right under your noses. And I see the director and his assistants taking those residents' rights from them, right under your noses, and they treat one people over here nice, but then when they come over here where Mr. Weekly's district at, they treat us like down south in slavery days. You never seen that. But anyway, I have the proof, I got the records to prove what I'm saying is true. And if any one of you would wish to see what my case is going to be, because I do have a case concerning the housing authorities' treatment and their grades and everything about how they're doing everything with the residents and the funders and all that. So basically I say you get an F from Jerry Neal, and you know this is not all of a sudden. This is over 2 years old. I've been fighting this case with them, about 2.5 years, I guess. And it's all because they took a water spigot off of my unit. Oh, Section 8. Oh, I apologize.
I was going to say, sir, are you public housing or Section 8? Because this is all pertinent to Section 8.
Okay, they took the water spigot off my unit and won't let me use my spigot.
Okay. All right.
Okay?
So,
I'm going to be a Section 8. Well, I didn't know.
it's part of,
But this is what you get when you don't get no help from public housing, and show you how this thing works.
yes.
Everybody's against us, the residents, and being ignorant.
We're hearing you. We're hearing you. This is educational for the new commissioners, and that we're also taking in the differences of our portfolio and navigating that. So This is kind of a quiz for us, so we appreciate Ms. Turner pointing Section 8 out. So is this pertinent to Section 8
It's
housing?
pertinent to
Okay.
Section